So I'm an economist. I'm working for the Chief Economist's Office at NOAA, and we don't have a tremendous need for energy economists in terms of volume, but we do have some critical needs where energy economists play a vital role in our work, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. So what I'm going to do is talk quickly about the NOAA mission, one slide that tells you what our goals are for this year, talk about the intersection with energy economics at NOAA, and then talk about a funding mechanism, one particular funding mechanism that should be of interest to you. Funding priorities, I've highlighted a couple of key terms up there, or not funding priorities, these are mission priorities. They relate to extreme weather. I did highlight all of them. So extreme weather, the economic contributions of the ocean, advanced space innovation. Each of those has an intersection, a strong and important intersection with energy economics. And because we don't have a tremendous need for that within NOAA, that's a good thing, bad thing. The good side of that is we don't have a lot of expertise on staff. And so we're having to reach out to folks like you to fill those needs when there is such a need. So I'm going to talk about four specific instances. You're familiar with the Northern Lights. Solar activity makes the skies really beautiful up in northern regions, but there's a wide range of solar activity, and some of it's more severe than others, and some of it can cause serious problems on Earth. Solar storms can affect aircraft crews, expose them to radiation, and passengers. They disrupt satellite communications and GPS technologies, but more importantly, this audience they can have a pronounced effect on the electric power grid. And so our investments in forecasting space weather, we do that at NOAA. We have a space weather prediction center in Boulder, not too far from here. And we try to give the energy sector as much heads up as we can about events that might affect the operation of the grid. How it operates the grid, it can be kind of a smaller level of solar storm could result in energy losses, voltage instability, transformer heating, but also that can lead to transformer failure and service interruptions and equipment failure. In 1989 in Quebec, there was a space weather event that caused multiple pieces of equipment to fail, which then put increased load on the grid and caused what you call a cascading failure out of the grid. It's the domino, and you click it, and they all fell. And so they were out of power for a long time. Space weather is one of these very significant events that could have the most disruptive impact on the power grids are these low probability, high impact events that, and our justification of expenditures to forecast those, to provide adequate warning, to prevent those catastrophic losses, is based on part in the damage reductions associated with of interest to you, the power sector. So in 1859, there was something called the Carrington event, and we didn't have cell phones back then, we didn't have satellites back then, but we had telegraph lines, and they were sparking. The atmospheric impacts of the solar event were causing sparking of the telegraph lines. Papers on the operator's desk were catching on fire. The northern lights were visible in Cuba. So we know that the sun has the potential to affect the Earth in that way. We haven't had a long enough time series to assign probability to something like that, but we're keeping an eye out. And we need folks in the field of energy economics to talk, to give us good feedback on the consequences of both the moderate and more extreme events. And we've done some studies like that, 3 in the last 3 years. And so that's an area where you can weigh in. And this is a image of the system that would be affected by the grid system that shows some of the impacts, and that's in my slides. Another more mundane way you could plug in is I'm leading a project team where we're measuring the size of the U.S. ocean-based economy, and we're including, let me go ahead and flip the next slide. We have these 10 sectors: energy, living resources, which is commercial fishing, associated activity, marine construction, marine research, education, and so forth. You can see the list. I've highlighted energy and offshore minerals because those are two places where energy economists play a role. Again, we have currently a data set, time series data on the U.S. ocean economy from 2004 to 2016. We finished 2017 numbers, getting ready to release them, but these new data are more complete and more accurate, and we are including in the energy sector fossil fuel plants that have a dependency on the ocean for instance, for cooling water, receiving fuel, that sort of thing, and getting good measures of that is a place where you folks could plug in. And then offshore minerals, the oil and gas industry is included in there to the extent it's operating in the offshore environment. And going back to energy, our time series data right now into 2016, but you have Block Island that's come online, and so the definition we're using is broad enough to capture within these economic statistics the emergence of the alternative energy sectors. And getting this right is really important. I mean, this creates an economic context for identifying stakeholders in the management of oceans, and so for an industry to be able to demonstrate their own contribution to the national economy, the importance of what they do is vitally important. So we're working with the Bureau of Economic Analysis to do this data set. A couple of other quick examples. Again, less dramatic, but winter storms take the power down, result in power outages, and when we improve our forecasting and we improve the communication of forecast information, it can reduce the losses associated with more mundane storms like heavy snowfall in New York City. And finally, we have a project that we did with Bolon, where we're looking at the intersection of geophysical data that tells us where it might be a good place to have offshore wind energy, and economic data that tells us places that are important for tourism and recreation, and sometimes there's resistance among the tourism communities in some parts of the country to having that. And so having that sort of information to see the places where a lot of potential and fewer conflicts is another study that we engaged in. So, how do you get the money? This is a contracting mechanism. This is a bit different from the other folks. Maybe we do a lot of our contracting. We're migrating our contracting to this PROTEC mechanism. It's, if you're familiar with a thing called a blanket purchase agreement, probably none of you are, but if you were, you know that we have a solicitation, we have skill sets that we've identified that we're going to need, and companies compete to be on our list. And then we issue task orders, and it allows us to rapidly execute contracts to these pre-selected contractors. And again, because the need for energy economics is less within NOAA, when we have projects that deal with that, these contractors typically reach out to folks like you to be on their team and participate in a study. I think I had a note on that I wanted to be sure. Oh, yeah. So, let's go back to this. How much money? There's two main kinds of contracts. I am actually a contractor working under a technical services contract that we have on-site staffing to NOAA offices provided through these very large multi-year technical service contracts that are multi-million-dollar contracts that extend typically from 3 to 5 years and then they're repeated. But we also have project-specific contracts, and they are they're typically in the realm of $75,000 to $300,000 contracts, and the space weather study that I mentioned was about a $300,000 contract. The winter storms impact on the electric grid, that was another one that's about $250,000 contract, and they're typically from 9 months to a year and a half. The rest of the slides to show you quickly how to navigate this site. The best way to get good, and there's some good information here where you can find out how to plug in. Heads up, there's 2 main ways to plug in. One is to contact me or somebody like me, work directly with NOAA about your research interests and find out if there's places where we need that expertise and can plug in. The other is to reach out to the contractors here. And so the way this is organized, you have to select a domain first, and we have 5 domains: satellites and fisheries, weather, and oceans and enterprise operations. Probably weather and oceans are the best places to start. And when you go to that domain, here's the fisheries domain. You can, I've highlighted, it's hard to read, but we have a description of the task area. So there's a very broad description of the kind of projects we expect to be working on. Then you can go to this tab, and it shows you the task orders that have already been awarded. So these are examples of, they're not meant as limiting factors, but they're the kind of work that we have already done. There's a procurement forecast, and most importantly, a list of the contract holders. These are the people, the primes under this contract, and that you can reach out directly to. I was a bit of a pessimist. I ran out 15 copies of this. There's more than 15 people here. But if you want a copy of one pager on the ProTech contract, I can give you that. I can give you my business card. And you can reach out to me if you want me to email you a copy.
We got a couple of questions.
Yes.
I have 3 topics. I just want to know if it's something that NOAA thinks about: hurricanes and the effect on refineries, for example, on the Gulf Coast.
Absolutely, yes.
Oil and gas, produced water management.
That's an interesting arena. The way that we would deal with wastewater management that comes to mind immediately is in our damage assessment program. The propensity of wastewater management facilities being impacted by a hurricane and then causing environmental impacts. But that's something certainly you should reach out about. That's not very remote from what we do.
And one more, flaring.
I'm sorry?
Flaring.
Flaring. We have a really cool product. I don't know if you've seen the NOAA Nighttime Light product, the map of the world at nighttime, and you can see all the lights. We have an application where you look at it from day to day, and if you find a new light that wasn't there yesterday, and then you overlay that with the locations of oil and gas, you can identify flaring, yes. But that is of interest to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Let's move to John Creamer. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.